All right, so now let's create some methods to actually simplify our code. We want to use methods to really encapsulate the work that needs to be done. So in this case, we want to have a method to get our input and store it in the array, and a method to generate our report. So how do we pass this? Well, the same thing that we know about an integer array is what we use here. So remember when we had a simple array of integers, you could write a method like this: get data, receives an array of integers. And remember, it doesn't need to return anything because arrays are passed by reference, which means anything that is happening to this array that's referenced as list in here is actually happening to the array that gets passed. So in main, if I create an array called nums and then pass nums to get data, this is how data will get stored into it. So we're going to make a method to store all the data into our array of employees. And so it's public static void get input. It receives an array of employee references. So what I did was basically take the same code that I had in main and moved it into this method. I called the array here a different name. Remember, it's fine if you use the same name, but I like to use different names to indicate that it works for whatever array I pass to it. So that means that I had to change the name here to list, and I had to change the name here to list. But other than that, it's the exact same code that was here in main. And so now I'm going to comment out all this code in main and replace it with a call to the method. Call the method to get the input. So we have get input, and we pass it the name of our array, which is company, right? At the same time, I've created a method that handles the output, a method called print payroll that receives, again, an array. Called it my same parameter name list. That's my kind of generic name that I use. And I'm printing out the data in that array using the for each loop, because I just find the syntax kind of useful when I do this. Remember, I can't use it for getting input. I would not be able to use the for each loop here. So only when you are just doing output. So here is that method. And so I will replace, again, the work that I had in main with a call to this method. So we'll call method so that's print payroll, pass it company. And if we test this, just put in any crazy data you want. And remember, you want to check your numbers, but we've got that. Now, if I wanted to align this, if I wanted to do 2 decimal places, then I would have to use printf for my output. But I always like to use just print line first to make sure the answers are correct. And once you know that that's the case, then you can focus on the syntax to do your formatting. So we have now created this entire program. We've got a public scanner. Main is now just creating the array and calling the 2 methods to actually do the work. And all the work is in the methods get input and the methods print payroll. So this is how you work with an array of objects. Again, the key is to remember that when you create this, you have created the rights to create 2 objects. And when I create the objects, you have to use a constructor either the default one, and then you could change it. So just to show you the second option of how we could do this, but it takes more lines of code, which is why it's not the way that I prefer. I could just create a default object, and then I could say list I dot set data and pass it the data that is in here. So this is an alternate method that works, but I think one line of code is better than 2 lines of code. And so that's why the choice that I use is to use the parameterized constructor. This is a really, really good use of a parameterized constructor. All right, so make sure and review all of these notes and make sure this all makes sense. Send any questions that you have.